Today we'll be talking about this great course, and James will be eating this. It's antipasto on red cargo rice, which I cooked up with seafood broth, and his weird bread things that I made. And I'll mostly be talking about the lectures up until about here, I think, today. And then I'll talk about the rest a little bit later. And this, you notice that this box is a different shape than the usual great courses that I get, and that's they've put 2 books out with this one, and it's the transcripts from the course.
Yeah.
So
sometimes it reads a little funny.
No, it reads well, I think.
Ever so occasionally it reads a little bit. But, it's still amazingly smooth for a transcript. Yeah.
This is. I never would have guessed that I would enjoy a philosophy course this much. He's doing such an amazing job.
He does a good job.
And but I will say that I've noticed a few things having watched this course through some of the discs a couple times, even though I mean, I could just read the books because I get everything in this one. I get everything from the DVDs in the books, which is not the case with most of the great courses.
Most of them are abbreviated, and some it seems highly abbreviated.
Yeah. So anyway, but I noticed that philosophy has been a sausage party made up of men who are largely an upper-class, scholarly crowd in Western society. Early philosophy looked to understand the scientific forces of nature and the political science that society follows. It then focused more on society, then Freud focused on the patient, and then philosophers focused on themselves. Then they focused on precise things, such as the use of words, or something like that.
Yeah, well, that's analytic philosophy. Well, I mean, a lot of the deconstructionists and postmodernists focus on words too much. They say, oh, that word is racist, and all sorts of ists and stuff like that. Whereas they should actually focus on real concepts, not the words that represent them.
So this focus from large to small actually shows that philosophy is simply a popularization of science. Philosophers are just journalists when the magic of the living world, where like great forces like gravity were the focus, and then they spent others' energy pontificating about that. So by that I mean...
Oh, that's funny, because pontificating means behaving like a pope. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you do. So, what I'm saying is they just sat around like a pope, and other people were tending to their needs. You know, basically a person should feed themselves. They should do the work to grow the food for themselves and feed themselves. Honestly, if they aren't, then they don't have time to do anything else because they have to learn how to do that first. It's something that really everybody needs to do for themselves.
Poets and philosophers should get a real job.
Yeah.
And do that stuff on their own spare time.
So when the magic of life was seen in the cell, so all of a sudden things, microscopes and everything, people were able to see more precisely. So, and this went also with not just the microscopes for the cell, but it also went like telescopes for seeing where the planets were and counting out the stars and whatever, right? And so then these things if you think about telescope, stars through a telescope really is just like cells through a microscope. Honestly, it seems like you're looking at bigger, but really it's focusing on the small. Honestly, it is. If you think about it, I am right. So then they spent other people's energy so they could think small instead of big. The thing is, their perspective is not balanced. They see the world through blinders and don't seem to realize it. In order to add any significant insights into a science, one would have to do much research on it. Therefore, those best to offer those insights would likely need a PhD in, say, chemistry before they started pondering chemistry's belly button. Honestly, it's a bit ridiculous. There were a few philosophers that pointed out philosophy needs to we need to stop doing it, you know.
But they've been saying that, like I think Nietzsche might have been saying that. He died 1900 and he stopped philosophizing. Like 1890 or 1889.
And philosophy is a fairly superficial art which admires science, but it isn't scientific itself, as far as I can see. It's
well, it's the humanities. It's not even a social science.
So anyway,
speaking of it being a sausage party, hopefully people understand what it means. I got a anthology of selections from the great philosophers, and it has a timeline which has some of the philosophers that aren't included in it. So that's 20 of them. And then the ones that are included, number 29. So that's what, 49 all told? How many women do you think are actually are in that 49?
I don't know, just tell.
2. Now, how many of them actually made the cut to have selections in there? What was that? It was 0.
Yeah.
So they did mention, I think, Mary Wollstonecraft about 200 years ago, and then Simone de Beauvoir, who lived in life. I think she might have almost made it to live in that, but she's buried. So, yeah, both would be classed, I think, as feminists, but pretty well everything.
No.
So it looked like a sausage party. I was thinking that even before you raised the issue. You know, as soon as I saw the numbers in the book, I was going, "Wow, this is fascinating." Because since 1970, there have been a lot of women who've
I didn't make notes on all of the philosophers because, frankly, a lot of them weren't interesting to me.
They probably even bored themselves.
Not enough,
if that's
right?
If that's any consolation.
But I mean, I guess I could make point for them, like basically what they were talking about, but I won't right now. I'm just gonna look over the notes that I highlighted, and because today I will be going to help the ladies, the Baptists, make washable menstrual pads, which they ship overseas for girls who can't afford. And anyway, so I'll be going to do that. Last time I was doing the snap thing, and I can't do that. My hand, I injured it years ago, and I guess if I start doing things like that, then it hurts, and so I need to be able to feed myself,
right?
Yeah, and live. So then I had to take photocopies, and I know I shouldn't be taking too many photocopies of things, but I had to take photocopies of this so I could highlight because my hand now my hand's okay again, so I'm not gonna hurt it today. But anyway, Rousseau took the step of identifying the true self with the community. My true self, my higher self, is identified with what's best for the community. My lower pole self is selfish, petty, and filled with commercial interest.
Go on.
Carved over the entrance of Auschwitz, work makes you free. Arbeit macht frei.
Arbeit macht frei.
Okay. I don't know German. I was trying. So
that was pretty good. Frei is cognitive.
And that was from lecture 6. And now lecture 7. This is going to be about Hume. And I found Hume really interesting, actually. And I didn't expect to.
Yeah,
but,
who would?
I mean, he was a Scottish guy.
Yeah, he was. I mean, that's amazing
That's amazing in itself. Because, I mean, here... I mean, if you've looked at history of Scotland, to have a great thinker come out of Scotland from that time, I kind of sound like a jerk here, But honestly, just look into the history and you'll see what I'm saying.
She's not being jerky. I'm part Scottish.
So am I.
Scottish, so there we go. So
whatever, but
please don't take it amiss, Rod
No.
Stewart and whomever else.
Suppose all knowledge and ideas derive from experience. Then there are two kinds of knowledge: matters of fact, which relate ideas from prior experience to new experience, and relations of ideas, which relate ideas from prior experience to each other. The former gives us real knowledge, but no certainty or necessity. The latter gives us certainty and necessity, but only about ideas. They are truths of definition. We cannot rationally show the sun will rise tomorrow, or that a drop stone will fall. We literally have no rational reason to expect it. Scientific statements merely summarize past experience. They cannot predict the future. Likewise, there can be no rational argument for the existence of substance, either material or mental, or God. Our beliefs on these matters are simply the results of custom or habit, not reason. David Hume, one of the most prominent members of the Scottish Enlightenment. All of the contents of mind for Hume are either impressions or ideas. Impressions are the lively, forceful perceptions that force themselves on us at each moment of experience. In effect, impressions are our experience, are all sensations. Whereas once those impressions have entered the mind, they begin to decay in forcefulness and become ideas. Ideas are decayed impressions, less forceful impressions. Thus, for example, the impression of my clapping hands. When I clap my hands, you hear the sound. I'm not going to clap my hands because it hurts my hands to do that, and I don't care. The original experience is an impression. The memory is an idea. The human mind can then remember, combine, split apart, change, and analyze these ideas. This is already a clue as to how radical Hume is going to get. By the way, for notice that only distinction between a perception of memory or imagination is a vivacity or force. A quantitative distinction. The implication is that if I took one of my memories, made it more and more vivacious or more forceful, I wouldn't be able to distinguish it from a perception, from an impression. Two categories exhaust all knowledge for Hume: knowledge of rationals or relations of ideas on one hand, and knowledge of matters of fact on the other. Note that both of these are based on experience. There is a problem with relationship ideas. They are true only by definition. In effect, they are trivial. They merely tell us that one idea is related to another. Matters of fact give us real knowledge about the real world. That is, about impressions, about experience. But matters of fact are never certain. They are never true by necessity. They tell us what is contingently true, not what must be true. All our claims of science, the certain things must necessarily happen, are based on that presumption that we can't possibly know to be true because it doesn't fit into either knowledge of the relations of ideas or knowledge of matters of fact. The general knowledge we gain from experience, for example, the idea that the sun will rise tomorrow, which all of us believe, presupposes something, namely that the future will resemble the past, or what is the same thing, it presupposes necessary connection. It presupposes that when some events happen, other events must happen. All that is a presupposition, but experience can't validate it. We may put this simply: neither the future nor necessity can be experienced. We have no knowledge of either. We cannot experience the future, and we cannot experience necessity. Therefore, empiricism, according to Hume, must say that we have to cease to use such concepts. We are left with constant conjunction. Necessary connection is out. He's saying we have no probable knowledge of future either. The very method of induction is in peril. Induction is the method by which we infer probable truth about a population of events from observing a selected sample of events. What Hume is claiming is the method induction has no rational justification. Since we have no knowledge, not even probable knowledge, of necessity in events, the future, we can't know the existence of forces that are experienced like gravity. Hume says experience gives us evidence that things fall, but it doesn't give us evidence that there's an unseen force making them fall. To believe in gravity is to believe in something. And what kind of thing is it? A force, a power that is itself unseen and makes other things happen. Hume says if you're going to say that's true, you might as well imagine that there are little gnomes or little sprites or spirits in the world making things happen. In other words, from Hume's point of view, it's completely unempirical, even unscientific to go beyond the claim things fall to the claim something unseen makes them. Of course, he believes that the sun will rise tomorrow. We all believe it, but it doesn't mean it's rational or right. Nature has put us together in such a way that whatever happens repeatedly causes our mind to expect it to happen again. This he calls custom or habit. Custom or habit guides our beliefs. So I will stop reading the notes there so that we can talk about that for a minute. Because I actually believe Hume is 100% right there. And I know you're thinking, wow, that's awful. Because our whole scientific method, everything in science is really wouldn't want to believe that this is true, right? But honestly, what he's saying is just you can't come to the conclusion that gravity makes it. What is gravity? You're given a word to something you don't understand. Basically, what you have to do is work harder so that you can actually understand that force. Or what's the point? You're working with something you don't understand, and that's really, I think, if people had respected Hume more, because apparently, like, we're watching another course at the same time, a history course, and he was saying Hume was basically shut out of intellectual circles. He wasn't,
academia?
Yeah, because of his views. And so, honestly, if you look at things, he's saying things that it does not profit him to do so. If you look at it that way, and when people do things and they're not profiting from it, you really should pay a little attention. Not necessarily. You have to look into things for yourself. But I think that if the scientific community had actually thought about what Hume was saying by that, then we wouldn't have run into so much trouble with scientists monkeying around with nature in ways that they really don't understand, and that's the scientists themselves, let alone the people that are using the technology past that point, once it's developed and fed to society, honestly. And then another problem is James and I have talked about the problems with physics, especially astrophysics, and
Also microscopic, because you're talking about how they're similar.
yeah,
The big trouble is you're dealing with extremes. You're dealing with stuff that you can't observe ultimately with your eyes. So then interpretation starts really rearing its ugly head. And it doesn't look nearly as beautiful as the Horstat Nebula or something like that. So,
do you have anything else to add?
well, I think
wanna
it's
talk about
important.
the
I think
coronavirus?
basically the thing to take from Hume is, like, you got to use induction in order to live. I mean, the classic case of induction is the sun is going to rise tomorrow because it's real simple. The day before that, on and on and on. But you better be ready for it not to rise.
Yeah, I mean, everybody expects it to rise, but
Yeah. So you got to live, but don't reify it. Like, I can come up with maybe a better explanation for gravity, but again, there's always a mystery behind it. Gravity is outside. Gravity's actually maybe something almost like a two-way force. There's also buoyancy. See, Newton didn't talk about that. That had been covered by Archimedes about almost 2,000 years before, a little less than 2,000 years before. But things don't always go to the center of the Earth. They clouds will go up and down all day. Well, not all day. Maybe there are a lot of them small. Maybe 15 minutes for cloud cell. So they go up and they condense and they appear, and then they come down and they disappear, right? And they just go up and down. What else goes up? Oh, helium balloons. You know, they actually do have mass, but they move away from the Earth. Hey, physicists, what's causing that? Well, they say it's buoyancy, but you see, like, buoyancy beats gravitation. What's going on? So, you know, this is one of the weird things about the concept of the black hole. Everything's going to go towards the center of a black hole if it's massive enough. Yeah, what about a helium balloon? You tell me, you know, like, what happens if you condense matter is it heats up. What happens when it heats up? It expands. What is that like? If you had something that wanted to be a black hole, all you'd have is a bunch of volcanoes on its surface from stuff venting out. You see it gets scrunched up, it heats up and comes splooching out.
Yeah.
Now, the main reason why we've got black holes, that crazy concept, is because Einstein was saying light is a particle as well as a wave, and therefore light has got to be attracted towards a source of gravity. But, you know, like, who's to say light wouldn't be like helium? You know what I'm saying? It's supposed to be really, really light. Basically, have the particles no mass. Why would it be like?
And well, James has talked about how electricity is a much stronger force than gravity in the past. Like, if you rub a balloon on your hair, you can get your hair to stand up with the balloon,
right.
And you can put the balloon on the wall and it's not going to fall.
A little bit of static electricity is fighting all the Earth's gravitational pull, and a little bit of gravitational pull from the balloon. Because both bodies contribute according to the formula formulated by...
But still, even then, I cannot say that if I rub a balloon on my hair and my hair will stand up, because honestly, I don't understand the principle.
Yeah, it's kind of hair raising.
So, yeah.
Realize how many mysteries there are behind it. So, yeah, from what I can see is gravitation along with buoyancy is a way... Now, I can't explain what makes things gravitational wells, but it's just a way things are sorted away from the well. Things that are more dense are closer. Things that are less dense are farther away. And so if you release a cannonball from the top of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, it's way more dense than the air particles surrounding the molecule. And boom, it goes down to where something's roughly the same density. And believe me, it's more dense than the stuff it's made out of iron or something like that. It will leave it'll try to pound in through the earth and leave an imprint in the ground, right? And that's not just because of its acceleration. It's partly just because it wants to go through.